So welcome, everyone. I'm Carolyn Whiteman, and I have the pleasure of hosting us tonight on this is what we call our OPA call. And for those of you who don't know, I had the good fortune of growing up and being mentored in the Shackley business by Mary and Gary Loomis. Interesting aside, I wasn't actually directly sponsored by them at first, but I was always mentored by them. And early on, after only a couple of years of being in the business, Mary had the wisdom to say, this business organization is going to grow beyond the place where people are going to know the Loomis name. And so we are going to give this organization an umbrella name so that when it's no longer connected with Loomis, or it might be Whiteman or Nistico or Madoran or any of Sharpen, any of the other 10 master coordinators in the Loomis organization, we would know that we all have a family heritage. And they named this OPA, which stands for Organic Products Associates. So the OPA logo is this wonderful family here, which has many of us in the family tonight, but also many guests, and everyone is welcome. This meeting is hosted once a month, and it is my pleasure to be the host tonight. But most importantly it's my opportunity to introduce our special guest. I had a topic set up until I had a chance to connect with Rick Seymour, and he has been doing some presentations. There are actually two different formats of things that are being presented now. One is a men's group that is doing some presentations on the focus on the big picture side, and another is a group that the Sherpans are working with, both of these, that are doing a business presentation. The business presentations are on Thursday nights at 8:30, and the one that Rick has been working with the men's program is on Wednesdays every other week. That's as much introduction as I want to give, because I want to honor Rick's willingness to be with us tonight and actually do a repeat of what he so beautifully presented last week and was not recorded. So I said, I'm going to take this opportunity. So please welcome from Littleton, Colorado, Master Coordinator Rick Seymour.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm delighted to be here. This is a fun topic for me to share, because what I'm going to do is give you a comparison between Shackley and other businesses. And when I first started putting this together, I knew that Shackley would come out smelling like a rose, but the reality was I had really no idea how significant this business model that we have is compared to other businesses. And so I'm going to jump right into this. And what I want to point out to you, first of all, is what somebody showed me almost 50 years ago that captured my interest. And that was, what if you build a network of people? And this example was shown to me, blew me out of the water. If you went out and you sponsored just two people, each of whom sponsored two, each of whom sponsored two, down to 6 levels, that's 2 in your first level, 4 in your second, 8 in your third, 16, et cetera, et cetera. That's 128 people just by starting a small network. But then they said, well, what if 4 sponsor 4 down 6 levels? And the reason I say 6 levels is we pay down to 6 levels in leadership bonuses. Well, by the time you get to the 4th or the 6th level with 4, it's 5,460. And then the question the guy asked me was, what's the difference between 5,460 and 128? And I'm trying to do the math in my head and subtract 128 from 5,460. And he paused a moment and he said, the difference is 2 people. That's when I understood the power of networking. And what J. Paul Getty, one of the richest men in the last century, said is, I'd rather have 1% of the efforts of 100 people than 100% of my own. And when you understand that concept, all of a sudden, the Shackley business model makes a lot of sense. And I think most of you have been exposed to the cash flow quadrant from Richard Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Everybody on the left-hand side, those are people who are employees or self-employed or professionals, literally renting their lives. In other words, you're exchanging time for money. That's what we call active income. And if you're not working, you're not earning. It's real simple. That's 95% of the people in this country, but they only have 5% of the wealth. But on the other side, people literally own their life. These are business owners and investors. They've learned how to leverage themselves. Now, there aren't many of us who have enough money to stick in a bank that we can live off of our money. So let's just look at the business owner quadrant and start thinking about what kind of business makes the most sense. But in general, those are only 5% of the people in this country, but they have 95% of the wealth because they've learned how to basically leverage themselves. They're earning even when they're not working, and they're earning what we call passive income. And somebody said to me years ago, you need to find a business that makes you money while you sleep. Well, I got it. I understood it. And I'm going to go across this table here and show you some examples of how other business models compare to Shackley. Now, if it's red, there's no comparison to Shackley. If it's yellow, it's a possible comparison to Shackley. And if it's gray, it's probably an okay comparison to Shackley. So let's start with franchises. Well, let's go down the list. To own a franchise, you don't need a degree. There's no cost for school, no years spent in school, no student debt left over. But the initial investment in this country for a franchise is somewhere between 40,000 and 2.5 million. And here's the amazing thing. 35% of those businesses fail. Nobody fails in this business. People quit, but nobody fails. If you just keep going, something's going to happen. Time to profitability, 3 to 5 years. In Shackley, a month. Because the reality is, if you only have to spend $49 to get into business, it doesn't take very long to earn that back. Employee problems, well, if you have employees, you have problems. It's just that simple. Our daughter owns a bistro up in Vail. I bet the average longevity of an employee for her is less than a month. She is constantly trying to find good people, and they're few and far between because nobody wants to work anymore. And especially in a resort town like Vail, if it's a powder day, everybody calls in sick. But the reality is, if you have employees, you got problems. The average income of a retail business in this country is $82,000 a year. Look at Shackley, anywhere between $12,000 to $574,000 average based on the ranks that you see in Shackley. Is there an income cap? Well, yeah, there's only so many hours you can be open, so many customers you can serve. In Shackley, there's no income cap. Freedom and flexibility? Absolutely not. You are literally married to that business, but in Shackley, we have tons of it. Is it mobile? Nope. You're stuck in a brick and mortar location typically. But in Shackley, yes, very mobile. Hours per week, the average franchisee spends 60 plus hours a week. In Shackley, 10 to 20 to build a very significant business. There's no residual income in a franchise, but yes, there is in Shackley. And can you hand it down to your kids? Well, that's kind of a question mark, but yes, in Shackley you can. How about this? What about a retail situation? Well, again, no degree is required, no schooling, no student debt. The average investment in a retail business is $98,000. 70% fail. Average time to profitability, 5 to 7 years. Employee problems, well, of course, if you have employees, you got problems. The average income of a retail business in this country is $53,000 a year. Income cap, yep, only so many hours you can be open. No freedom and flexibility. It's not mobile, 60 plus hours a week, no residual income. Maybe you can hand it down to your kids if your kids are interested. What about a service business? Let's say you are the best body guy in the Ford shop, and you decide you're tired of making your $40 an hour. You're going to go out on your own. You're going to make it on your own. And you decide you're going to open your own body shop business. Average investment for a service business, whether you're a plumber, electrician, whatever, you go out and you spend about $10,000 on tools. That's assuming you don't need a new pickup truck. 82% of those businesses fail. Time to profitability, typically about a year if you're one of the 18% that make it. If you have employees, you got problems. And the average service income in this country is $41,000 a year. Keep looking at these numbers over here on the right for Shackley. Red all the way down to the bottom. Okay, how about a startup? Everybody today dreams that they're going to invent the next app that's going to make them $1 billion. They're going to retire at the ripe old age of 26, a multi-billionaire. Well, guess what? Again, you don't have to have any education to pull that off. In fact, some of the biggest, probably highest money earners on the planet never finished college, like Bill Gates, for example. But how much money does it take? I have both a son-in-law and a grandson who have been involved in startups, who have had startups that failed, where the angel investors in one case invested over 10 million, in the other case over 17 million, and it all went right down the drain with zero success. 96% of startups fail. 96%. Only 4% make it. If they make it, it's typically 5 to 7 years to profitability. If they have employees, they have problems. Average income, nobody really knows because the percentage that make it is so small, it's just hard to figure that out. Is there an income cap? Not necessarily, so it's kind of a question mark, but no freedom and flexibility. The two family members I have that are involved in startups, both of them worked over 80 hours a week to fail. 80 hours a week. Are they mobile? Nope. They were married to their computer day in and day out. They spent 70 to 80 hours a week, zero residual income if you don't make it. And if you're one of the 4% who do, maybe it's something you can hand down to your kids. How about becoming a doctor? That's a great idea. We got a granddaughter who is just finishing up her 3rd year of residency. She is going to be a brand new pediatric surgeon. Very excited about it. She is sitting there right now having spent over $600,000 on her degree. She is sitting there with $250,000 in debt. She has spent almost 16 years in school before it's all done, and the expectation of a very nice income. But is it worth all of that? And the risk, low for most doctors. Time to profitability just depends on how much you spend up here, whether you're opening your own practice and have to invest more, whether you're going to work for a PPO. Nobody really knows what that looks like. If you end up with employees, you have employee problems. In fact, I just met a doctor recently who is closing his practice because he is sick and tired that he can't find office help. He's going to go get a corporate job with Kaiser because he's just fed up with the whole thing. Average income for a doctor, $350,000. Oh, look over here on the Shackley side. Isn't that interesting? Income cap, yep, there's only so many patients you can see. No flexibility, you're not mobile, lots of hours typically, no residual income. Can you hand it down to your kids? Of course not. How about a lawyer? Very similar situation. The only difference is the investment in school, typically 150 to 240K, 7 years. Average student debt for an attorney is 130,000. Average income, 100, or average investment, when you look at all of that, is 150 to 240K. Risk is low. Trying to profitability, who knows? Employee problems, if you have them. The average attorney in this country earns $87,000 a year. Oh, isn't that an interesting number over there with Shackley? Look at that, red all the way to the bottom of the page. How about an engineer? And I put that in there because I was one. I'm a recovering aerospace engineer. Yes, I was a rocket scientist. And guess what? Today, if you want to be a rocket scientist, you have to have a degree. You're going to spend about $104,000 for college. You're going to spend at least 4 years. Average student debt, $37,000 a year. Average income for a graduated engineer is $104,000. Risk is medium. And the reason I put medium in there instead of low is because, for example, when I was part of the aerospace program, every time this big corporation I worked for won a contract, they'd hire 2 or 3 or 4,000 people. And every time they lost a contract, they'd lay off 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 people. You never knew from one day to the next if there's going to be a pink slip in your paycheck. So there's a risk there. Just because you have a job, and what seems to be a great environment, the reality is you just never know. Time to profitability, well, as soon as you get that job, you're probably going to be profitable within a very short period of time. If you end up with employees in a large group, you got employee problems. Average income for an engineer in this country, 64,000, excuse me, up here. That was the investment. Here is the average income, 64,000 a year, and red all the way down the page from there. How about just a regular employee with a degree? And today, because of AI, they're now saying that a bachelor degree won't be anywhere close to what you need to be a functional employee in the workplace going forward. But when you look at that, it looks just like the engineer in terms of the investment and the actual investment in terms of hours, number of years in school, student debt, et cetera, et cetera. But the average income for just a regular college degree in this country is $59,000 a year. Look over here at Shackley. I got to keep reminding you of that. And it's red down the rest of the page. When you look at this chart, red means there is zero comparison with Shackley. What do you see? 90% of that chart is red. There's virtually nothing out there that can give you what Shackley can give you with his lower risk and as small a time commitment as what Shackley can do. It's what let me go from a 29-year-old rocket scientist to a Shackley entrepreneur to leaving corporate America at the ripe old age of 38. And for the last 39 years, semi-retired, we've had a six-figure plus income because of this amazing, amazing company. And when you look at what's out there and available, what I was attracted to was the freedom and the time and the money. I started in the early days of the space program. The work was intriguing because everything we were doing was being done for the first time. I mean, 47 years ago, we put a lander on Mars with less technology than you have in a cell phone. So the work was fun. It was interesting. It was fascinating. It had never been done before, but being part of a very large corporation with all the politics, with all the bureaucracy, and being a NASA contractor with another layer of politics and bureaucracy drove me crazy. And I knew I could not spend my life in a cubicle doing my analytical thing. And when I was exposed to the idea that I could have the freedom and the time and the money that Shackley offered, be part of an amazing community of people who have similar goals and similar values, knowing that I could earn a car bonus and have travel all over the world. And in fact, we have. Aldana and I think to date have been in 60 different countries. All of those because of our involvement in Shackley, knowing that our family is going to have excellent health because of these extraordinary products and making a real difference in the world, one person at a time. That's amazing when you think about it. So here's what I want all of you to think about. What is it you want? You want more freedom? Do you want more time and money? Do you want to be part of this amazing community? Knowing that you're changing people's lives because of these products, that's what it comes down to. And when you compare Shackley to virtually every other business model on the planet, there is nothing that compares as far as I'm concerned. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Carolyn.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Rick, that is so stunningly impressive. And I think the comparisons are so valid. You, I know, relate to Simon Sinek's wonderful The Golden Circle. It starts with why. And I think that is such a wonderful reminder for us that when we look at why are we doing what we're doing, to be able to look at this from a business perspective, as well as from the perspective of a mission of what it is that we're able to accomplish by offering this to other people, and obviously to help them improve their health and the health of the planet and so on. Are there some stories, Rick? Well, we've got still a couple of minutes we can hold on to you. Are there some stories that you would like to tell about either some people in your group or maybe some of your own personal stories? Because I can tell you that I happen to know that Rick is an outstanding athlete and has been involved in cycling, high altitude stuff, all the great Colorado ventures. Are there any of those kinds of stories that you feel that you'd like to share?
Well, I think one of the things that has been so interesting for us is that today we have a generation of millennials who get a lot of bad rap, but the reality is they're probably the most entrepreneurial generation in history. And what Shackley offers, I think, has more attraction to the younger generation today than it even did to my generation. And I think once people have been out in the workplace long enough to get beat up a little bit, all of a sudden this makes a whole lot more sense to them. And when I look at the sort of the cross section of our organization, we have got a lot of people who have been in this business for 30 and 40 and almost 50 years. But we also have a lot of young people who are incredibly attracted to what Shackley has to offer. And I can think of a couple right now, actually, who are part of this new men's elite group that we started, who are very entrepreneurial in spirit, have also struck out on their own before they were introduced to Shackley. And now that they've been introduced to Shackley, see the value and the power of what they've gotten a hold of that can be both synergistic with what they're currently doing, as well as maybe being an ultimate career change for them. So I think when you recognize what it is we've gotten a hold of and learn how to communicate it to the younger generation, I think you're going to be pretty astounded at the kind of response you get. And the fun part for me, I said years ago, I only want to recruit young people so that when I'm too lazy to work, they're still working. Well, guess what? We can all make that happen, but that only happens, and I want to come back to what you said about Simon Sinek, is that if you share your why, if you share your passion, if you share why this is significant and important to you, you'll be amazed at the number of people you attract and are open to hearing the story that you have to share.
Mm-hmm. And it is a big piece of that mission and vision. And for those of you, again, who don't know Rick a little bit, you saw the picture. I love the rocket scientist, hippie, jock, Colorado guy, and what you have done in the business. Say a little bit, Rick, about the transitions that you made in terms of personal development and skills that you added, because I know that's part of your personal story.
Well, I was the stereotypical aerospace engineer with zero people skills. In fact, I would not even eat lunch in the company cafeteria because I was afraid somebody would talk to me. And when we were introduced to Shackley through the biodegradable cleaners, we invited this guy to tell us about it, which he did. And then he started talking about nutrition. And I didn't, you got to remember, this is 49 years ago. I didn't know anything about nutrition, didn't care about nutrition, didn't believe anything he said about it, just totally blew that part of the conversation off. And then he started drawing circles and lines, did what I showed you right there in the beginning. And when I saw that, being a mathematician and a scientist, I understood immediately the power of multiplication and leverage and decided right then, I had not seen or touched a Shackley product, and decided right then this was my future. So I came home from work every night for about 3 weeks. I'm drawing circles and lines. What if two sponsor two, sponsor two? What if 10 sponsor 10, sponsor 10? I mean, this is exciting stuff. And one night, Aldana came home from work. She looked over my shoulder as I'm drawing circles and lines, and she goes, "Do you realize those circles are people?" And I almost had a heart attack. It had never occurred to me that I was actually going to have to go out and talk to somebody. And so my personal growth transition started right then and there. And I'll tell you, to go from somebody who was afraid to open their mouth and have a conversation with the lunchroom with somebody that they knew, to being able to skill up and do what's required to do this business. If I can do it, anybody can do it. It's just that simple. And it's just a matter of learning a few skills, one of the most important of which is learning how to ask questions, how to draw people out, how to find out what's important to them before you ever bombard them with Shackley. Because we all started out that way. I mean, when I finally got to the place I'd open my mouth, I'd just jump on people like a chicken on a June bug, tell them everything I knew about Shackley and hope they like something. And would never know whether they actually did when it was all over with, because we never understood how to really relate it to them. So skill up, work on yourself. In fact, Gary Burke said something to me 40 some years ago I've never forgotten. He said, if you'll work as hard on yourself as you do your business, you'll have a great business. I believe that to this day, and not a month goes by that I haven't read another book on personal development, because we all need it. Doesn't matter how long we've been around this, how good we think we are, we all can get better and do better than what we're doing. Oh, Carolyn, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. That's such a powerful example. And what I will add is to your story, and that is, I think one of the really valuable things that this business gives to us is really the requirement to continue to work on ourselves, because it isn't the business, it's our ability to deal with ourselves, with our mindset, with our time management, with our people skills and all of that. And I think that's one of the huge values that the business really requires of us.
Well, and you know, so interesting to me is I took up the silly game of golf at 64. And I've often wondered, had I started earlier, would I be a better golfer or a duffer longer? I'm pretty sure duffer longer is the answer. But everybody understands that 90% of the game is right up here. And I will guarantee you 90% of the Shackley game is right up here. If you work on that, the rest of it just starts to fall into place.
Rick, you're such a wonderful mentor for all of us, and your presentation is powerful. Let me see if we got like 2 minutes. Do we get to see if anybody's got any questions or any comments that you might like to add, just to thank Rick, because he's about to take off to his own business organization? Anybody got, I don't know, Scott, are people allowed to unmute themselves? Or maybe Bill Firth. I see Bill there. Bill.
Yeah, Rick, I listened to the other night, and I wasn't able to write down and take pictures and how we do this. But I listened again tonight, and it just re-emphasized. This is probably one of the, I don't know, one of the best presentations I have really, and I've been doing this a long time, on how to picture the opportunity, how to compare the opportunity, and it's fair. It's driven with the data that you put together. I'm sure is right on, and it would be wonderful. I don't know how, but if it's a way we can get it so we can use it. I don't know if that's possible or not, but
Well,
thank
Bill,
you.
I'd be happy to send the PowerPoints to Carolyn and let her figure out
All
how
right.
to distribute them.
Okay, but outstanding, Rick. Just terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah,
Well, listen,
thank
I got to sign off so I can get back on before everybody thinks I abandoned them. So, good night, everybody.
Thank
Rick,
you.
thank you so much for giving us this time in your evening, and we appreciate you. Best to Aldana, and it's an honor to be partnering. And for some of you who don't realize, we're not in each other's business organizations. I'm not in Bill Firth's organization. We're not in Rick and Aldana's. There are many people on this call that are really lifetime friends, but are not necessarily connected with a business relationship. And I think that's one of the real joys of our Shackley business.